the competitive market has changed so much. And it's like that across the board where juniors, entry level jobs just don't exist
Yeah.
because all of these roles, all of that work, all that labor that would be given to a junior artist or even a mid-level artist, it's all stuff that an art director can automate, right?
Hmm.
It took me my whole life to figure out what I was going to do before. So it's been a year and a half. I'm still figuring it out.
I went to design school. I went to OCAD. I graduated. I got a job right out of school, an agency, worked there for years, and then started my own company. And it's been steady trajectory. So in the COVID years where everything was getting a little like I was losing work, I was like, holy shit, I'm not working as much. I was looking for jobs. I'm like, I'm looking for work. I'm applying, and I have 15 years of experience under my belt
Mm-hmm.
in a professional way. And so within a month, I applied to about between 35 and 50 jobs, did not get a single call. And I'm like senior level. I'm like, what the is going on? This is crazy. Welcome back to Graphic Content, the podcast where we talk all things who, why, and the what the moments along the way. Today, my guest is Quinn Carvalho, an artist whose career spans practical effects, digital and 3D art, film, illustration, and storytelling across some of the biggest productions in entertainment. Quinn's work has earned industry recognition at the highest level, but what makes his journey compelling isn't just where he's been, it's how he's navigating where things are going. At a time when technology, AI, and creative tools are evolving, he's actively questioning, adapting, and reimagining what it means to be an artist today. Welcome to Graphic Content, Quinn.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You're
Yeah,
welcome. So how have you been? I know it's been there's been a bit of back and forth with the getting to this point, but how have things been so far?
the New Year's going well. Just like come through the holidays. Took a break from trying to produce meaningful artwork and just got back into the hobbies.
Hmm.
Things are going well. Things are going fine. They're going as good as they can be right now.
Hmm.
Yeah.
The hobbies are important. Honestly, that is the that takes me out of my I gotta produce, I gotta do like all
Yeah.
these things and this pressure I put on myself to like relax and be like, oh right, let me like recalibrate and get back to me.
I was doing Warhammer over the holidays.
Wait, hold it up again.
Like
That
miniatures.
you made that?
Well, I painted it.
That's amazing.
Well, it's just like speaking of like artists, like when you're working in design and you're always trying to
Hmm.
produce something. There's always like meaning if you're painting or if you're like
Yes.
doing work for a client. I'm like none of that. So much of that just isn't relaxing anymore because it's all
Yes.
like you're all your focus and it's
Hmm.
money and like. So I was like, you know what? I just need to check out,
You
do
need
something.
that. I love
Yeah,
that. So are you do you paint a lot?
I have a lot of hobbies. The Warhammer. It's like Warhammer and Lego
Hmm.
are like two guilty pleasures that are like low stakes, right? They take you away from the medium, they take you away
Hmm.
from expectations, and you're able to just like, I'm just gonna paint this little man. Like,
Yeah, I feel you on that. When I went away recently and my friend brought watercolors and she had like everything like paper, paintbrushes, like all of it.
yeah.
And for the 9 days I spent with her, I think five of them I spent hours painting and just sitting by the beach. And it was one of the like, oh, right, like this part of Geo that I know is there has not gone away, but I don't like check into it often. And
Hmm.
that to me was so, it just made me realize like, girl, you gotta go back to this part of yourself because it's important. Because like I mean, we see each other's stuff on Instagram, and all my shit is digital. That's all I do. Is all
I
client
mean,
work,
yeah,
right?
yeah, same. And it's been all digital for so long. Using acrylics to paint like a miniature or do just have fun, like just kind of just fool around. Like actually, there's a that's like the first oil painting I've done ever on canvas. You just barely see it.
I love it.
It was just like I just try to have fun with medium and getting away from the screen.
I'm like a third party viewer of your work. I've been following you now for I think pre-COVID. I think it's been a hot minute.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And the way that you imagine the your work, your art is so left of center. I love the way that you do it. Even that oil painting is reminiscent of your digital work. It's I love
Yeah.
the like talk to me a little bit about like where do you get that inspiration and where does that come from?
Well, are you talking a lot about like the kind of horror and the guts and
Yeah.
monsters and stuff?
Yeah.
I don't know. I've always loved monsters and horror movies, and
Hmm.
I got to work doing VFX. Or not I've done VFX, but I got to work doing special effects makeup too. And that was always like a big part of my life. Halloween, guts and gore and stupid horror movies and Friday the 13th. Like that's always been a big part of my cultural interests, just because I think it's just so much fun. And so when I kind of started exploring, my own expression, that was a big part of it. But like this guy back here, he's got like the guts on his head, and
Yeah.
the oil painting was kind of a return to that. As much as the subject matter is pointed, it's also just been those materials, like the materials you see in that kind of context, they're
Hmm.
just fun to paint.
Yeah.
Like it's just fun to study complex material surfaces, which is a big part of my work and my digital work. Painting something like guts and gore, where the subject matter can veer off and become disturbing. I try and bring it back to something that, as when you look at it as an audience, it's a bit more subdued and a bit more, I hope that I can twist my audience perception so that it's
Hmm.
something nice to look at, because I've always just thought almost like plants, like painting a still life, painting glass, painting organic materials, painting things that interact with the light and have like depth and texture and material like within themselves. It's just a lot of fun. So for me to practice oil paints for the first time, these are materials that I can practice blending on. I can practice, controlling the medium in a kind of like free form, sort of like low stakes environment,
Hmm.
because organic materials are so flexible and so interesting. So kind of where my subject matter started, and I did a series of these characters, and something I return to because it's kind of like just starting with start every, some people, I start by painting an apple every time. It's like, no. I'd rather just like dive into it and have fun, and I like weird spooky things.
I love it. I think because it's such a contrast from my approach. Like a comment that I got once was like, "Oh, you really love drawing like creatures, but they're always like fun, kind of like bubbly type style of like animation type things." And so the contrast from like my own art is it's so dark, like in the way that you approach it. But I love the juxtaposition of the organs with different like torsos, midsections, cross sections, and these characters that you create.
Yeah.
That's honestly why I reached out. I was like, I love the thought behind it. I think that the perspective is so unique from what I've been seeing in general. And that's why I've been hounding you to be like, hey, come talk to me.
Yeah, sure. Well, and, it's I'm glad that it's unique, and that's something I work really hard to bring to all my work. Like the last time I was hired at a studio, the gentleman I interviewed with, Jordan, he's my art director, and in the interview, like his one comment about my portfolio, he was like, "Your work is very avant-garde,"
Hmm.
um, and that's really good to hear from someone who's super successful in the industry, who's looked at tons of work, who's worked on tons of movies, who's done everything, who's worked with Del Toro, who's like, to hear from him that my work is avant-garde, which is something he's never seen before, is super refreshing and makes me
Hmm.
really proud, and it means that like my mission statement has been achieved, because where I gather my source, like where I look, is, I like scan my mind for this. I have this like visual matrix in my mind of everything I've seen, and I look for voids in that visual matrix. So it's like, what is missing? What if I've not seen it, nobody's seen it. So I try and fill those gaps, and it's funny because I've landed on a recurring subject matter that comes from horror and comes from my interests as a kid, and my work in makeup and like all these different things. But it's actually been a lot of fun, because the thing that kind of unifies my perspective and what I hope my audience gets from that is I'm trying to talk about vulnerability, right? And
Hmm.
and I don't paint violence. I'm not a fan of researching violence. One of the reasons I stopped doing makeup is because I was studying violence all the time. And where that's a beautiful art to recreate life and decay, it was, staring at that kind of media all the time to replicate it is taxing. And I thought, well, why can't we talk about literally what's inside us, this shared this very vulnerable nature of what it means to be a person. Why can't we talk
Right.
about this in a different way? So I like to bring these materials and that replication of life, and I try to like present it in a way that hopefully changes the audience's perception or makes them think about it differently.
Even just the way that you're describing it, I think that there's a thoughtfulness to how your work speaks, and I think that it's an interesting kind of juxtaposition because you're using a digital art form, but then now you're like kind of returning to like tactile. So that being said, like how are you finding that shift where you're like, okay, I've worked in digital for so long and then now I'm kind of returning to a more like tactile art form?
Using my hands, I've done that all my life. So like I have the motor skill. I'm not rusty. Specifically with oil painting, like the works behind me, a lot of the digital stuff I've done as a series, they're digital studies of oil paint. So like I practice and I study oil painting, traditional oil painting, and then it's something I emulate in a digital environment. Bringing it out and working on canvas, it feels very natural to me. I'm not exploring techniques as much as I'm just kind of returning to
Just going for
existing
it.
processes. Well, it's like the way I use Photoshop to create a piece of digital artwork, to create a painting. It's very similar. I'm laying down base colors, I'm blending things. Like I literally study oil painting, but it's digital. So it feels like home. Like it's not difficult to pick up for me. It's more just like I'm kind of sick of looking at screens, so why don't I just start
Fully, right?
fooling, fooling around with actual material, which is nice. I've always enjoyed practical work, practical effects, right? Costumes, paintings, sculpting. Like it's all
Mhm.
stuff that is a lot of fun. So
For somebody meeting you for the first time, like how would you describe what you do now? And like what's that the difference from what it was like, let's say 5 or 10 years ago?
my brother says I need to learn new tricks.
Okay.
Um, I don't disagree. I feel like I've kind of been doing a lot of the same kind of, not the same necessarily same kind of work, but I had 15 years of picking up digital work.
Hmm.
Like I started using Photoshop when I was a teenager. So for 14 years now, I've been using 15 years. I've been using Photoshop in a professional context. My work before that time it was a lot more fun and play. Like when I was much younger. So I was doing like makeup and costumes and stuff just for fun. And when you compare my work then to now, there's just there's a lifetime of care that goes into what I'm producing as an adult.
Hmm.
I think it's been a natural progression going from a place of play as a kid and then going into digital work as a teenager in high school. And there's been an ongoing growth where I went to school for makeup. I worked doing makeup, so it's like that's stuff that I've sunk my teeth into doing practical effects. That was something that later came into play because once I built a digital portfolio that I could I could apply to digital work or jobs,
Hmm.
or even school, like going to George Brown in Toronto. The things I've studied in the real world, it's all stuff that I've brought into my work professionally in film, in VFX. When I finished at George Brown, my commitment and my understanding of the real world and my study of all these things that all these physical materials was a huge help, right? A lot of young people might not spend that much time studying practical material and the way things go fit together, people, bodies, animals, metal, like all of these different things where they join, and the way these materials interact and the way things actually behave in life and the way things are manufactured. This is all stuff that I've studied. By the time I was applying for my first jobs out of George Brown to work in film, I got the job I wanted right away because the gentleman who was interviewing me at MPC, or it was Mr. X Toronto, he was like, he was like, this is really, this is unique. I really love the way you have a practical background in effects, right?
Hmm.
Because it meant that I could kind of cross boundaries and I had an understanding of what we were doing in the digital environment. I understood the
Totally.
materials, and it's not about understanding replicating life. It's like I understood how these materials behaved and interacted in a movie making way, right? Because I know silicone and foam latex, and I know what it takes and how acrylic paints, for example, like are used to recreate movie sets, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there was a big support. Like it was a lot of transferable skills, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
right? That have aided me in my broader pursuit, right?
Yeah.
And so that's been rewarding because, you know, when I decided, oh, I don't really want to do makeup, people around me were like, oh, but why are you so good at it? And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
well, because that's not the be all end all. And working digitally was attractive. It meant that I could, it's like alchemy. You can make anything, right?
Yeah.
It's total creative freedom. And I'm glad that all my skills and all my abilities and all my studying has like come together, and I was able to work in film, and it was something that was celebrated, and it meant that I could communicate across departments. It's like fate. Like the movie that I worked on where I got my award, the Pinocchio movie with Del Toro. That whole film is animated feature, and one of the things that I spent a lot of time doing is replicating foam latex appliances, because everything was sculpted, painted with acrylics, painted with oil paints, carved foam. Like, we weren't recreating life; we were recreating miniatures. We were recreating sculptural art.
Yeah.
I wasn't just looking at a reference to match a reference. I knew how these materials felt, how they behaved, and so I was able to bring all of that. And it's funny how I was able to like use it on such a specific project where I wasn't just recreating the way something would look in real life. I was recreating the way something looked at small scale, which is something I was familiar with, right? So it was actually a lot of fun. It was rewarding. It was cool that I could apply all my experience on such a specific project where it was so celebrated. And then it all paid off, right? The film's production designer responded really well to it. Like, he could tell there's an attention to detail, not just about the work, but actually actual material understanding, because that
Mm-hmm.
made a big difference. It gave the project realism, right?
Mm-hmm.
Digital environments that were extensions of practical miniatures felt physical. They felt real because I was able to like really, really own all of that I understood about the project, about the material, about what it takes to put these things together in the practical environment. So it was actually a lot of fun.
What was your favorite part in that process? Because what you're describing, it seemed to me as somebody who's in the creative industry, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. But when you're taking that, let's say the concept, and you're bringing it to life in the way that you did, where what you're saying is there's like a digital and a tactile component kind of mixed together.
For Pinocchio, which is a stop motion animated feature, like in a regular film, there's captured footage, there's shots that would have been storyboarded and then built as sets, right?
Hmm.
So in the world of miniatures, the sets that were being built were only, for capturing a miniature. And so what that meant was client side, they would film the whole project. I think it took like 2 or 3 years to put that together in stop motion, including building all the practical sets and practical environments. And so then once we had those shots and once we had all the reference material given to us by client, then it was our job as VFX artists to basically plan, execute extensions or digital environments that fill those gaps, that would take what is a small set captured on camera, right, with stop motion, and
Hmm.
then be able to digitally extend that or embellish it, enhance it, create skies and lighting, and on the baseline they're digital set extensions most of the time, based off of reference from client, right?
Yeah. Just from what you're saying, like a lot of artists for long periods of their life, like they'll chase certain milestones, and like you've already reached that with winning the award, the Visual Effects Society award. So like how did that come to be, and how did that recognition like clarify what success means to you today?
When I started at Mr. X out of school, I began working with a few peers. So they hired myself and a couple other junior artists, and we became like a little unit in VFX, in film. Working in that industry, something that I realized was a lot of these really talented people that you're working with are, just nerdy artist types who
Yeah.
are passionate about what they do, who are very much about, head down, focus on the work, they care. But I could see maybe my personality or my skills, it was able to shine a little bit, because where a lot of these guys have talents and abilities that I lack, I was able to kind of use my voice and my confidence to sort of begin directing the team. And my leads responded really well to that, because they're like, oh, this is great, like Quinn's taking, not control, but Quinn's taking responsibility for
Mm-hmm.
these projects right away. And that was cool, because I felt really good in that role. I felt like I was able to bring to the table good communication skills, good
Yeah.
leadership skills. My colleagues who I was working with, while we were all junior artists, they also responded well to that too, because I think they maybe that's an area where they weren't comfortable, right? So we were able to work with each other and help fill gaps. And just really quickly, I started to show up with the team as a leader, and so that was rewarding. And I'm glad that I kind of took that initiative too,
Mm-hmm.
because it paid off, right? So by the time I was at Mr. X for a little while, I was being given more and more responsibility, and it was going well. Like it was in charge of shots, I was in charge of environments. It was cool, because my leads felt confident they could leave a shot or a scene, or whatever it is, with me, and I would be able to execute that, communicate what we needed done to my colleagues, to the other junior artists I was working with. It kind of all came together pretty organically, and just
Mm-hmm.
because of my nature. Pretty quickly, I was on track, having a bit more responsibility than other artists who were side by side with me. Basically, all that meant was that, by the time we had higher profile projects coming together, my bosses felt good about leaving me with the task, right? Where I was working, the team was fostering, like the people who were with me in my department were happy to help, and I was able to ask questions. So it wasn't like, oh, it was a one-man show. I
Right.
owe much of the success to my colleagues who were seniors, or people around me, and I was able to get a lot of guidance. But it was just cool, because I was seen by my leads, and it felt good because I was able to deliver, right? My boss is responding well to my leadership skills. It all kind of just lined up. And then by the time I was being put on Pinocchio, the movie had already been running for a year or so. Like it was already an ongoing project. Basically, I was briefed, and they said, okay, Quinn, here's the deal. Client is not happy with how Pinocchio is going. Client is not satisfied. We're having trouble with these three environments. They're way behind. The artists who are on those projects, they're doing great work, but they're missing the ball a little bit, because
Okay.
this is a high priority, and where they are lacking, we don't have time to necessarily like keep teaching them, or hold
Right.
their hands. So they said, listen, Quinn, if you can, we're going to put you on Pinocchio, and we want you to just do what you do best, and kind of help coach these guys, and just make it work. Like
Yeah.
we need someone to take control and make this come together, because
Get
client is,
done.
yeah, they're like, no, like we don't have time to like have this be going poorly. We have
Mm-hmm.
6 or 8 months left. And I was like, yeah, okay, sure. So I got briefed on the project. I got briefed on the shots and the environments that we needed help with, and my colleagues, my peers, were briefed as that I was joining to help support, and they responded pretty well to that, because I had a good rapport with my peers, and it worked out. So like right away, like within a week or two, we saw a turnaround. Client was happy. We were on track, and then they're like, okay, well, this is obviously going well. Quinn, stay on this. We're gonna just have you work on this to support the leads, and to support the project until final. We had time by the end of the project to do really cool detailed tweaks, to have we had room for creative work, not just bottom line minimum. It has to look as good as it can. We were able to make it look as good as it could, right?
Mm-hmm.
From starting at the company to being nominated for an award like that
Mm-hmm.
happened in a year and a half, which was super rewarding for me. And I'm really glad that my bosses were so responsive to just what I was prepared to do, and my nature, and how invested I was in these projects, and
Mm-hmm.
it really paid off. And so by the time the project finalized, and I was literally sending images to client production designer and Guillermo del Toro. I was there at like 8 p.m. being like, okay, what do you think about this?
Yeah.
Oh no, let me change the color a little bit. What do you think about this? Right. So that was a lot of fun.
Everybody wants to be recognized, and we want to, even though like we're just doing our work, but like for you, like how did that shift your perception of self, especially in a world where you are communicating with Guillermo del Toro?
I felt seen and I felt fortunate, but I think the thing that got me there was because I already saw that in myself, right? Like
Mm.
I already knew that I was capable. I communicated confidently. I presented myself like I was capable
Yeah.
because I knew I was. I knew that my attention to detail and the level of care I brought to my work across the board was what we needed to get these projects done. And so like that I started doing that the first week, right? Within by the second week at Mr. X, I was in charge of basically planning, designing architecture for it was called Pachinko, which was like a Korean period drama that was put out. When I was on Pachinko, when I began at Mr. X, we were given a brief, divided up into like little tiny teams
Hmm.
where I was working with three other artists, and then we had a digital map painting artist to help dress and paint our backgrounds. Her name was Danny Devereaux. She's amazing. As a junior, like coming out of school, doing environment work, I just put myself into those shoes, right?
Yeah.
Because I felt like I could do it. I felt confident. I felt like where my peers were humming and hawing and kind of going, oh, I don't know, like, what do you think about this? I just was like, no, we're going to do it like this. It's going to look like this.
Yes, I love that.
And we got the brief. I did the research. I just started telling people what to do.
Yeah.
And my boss was like, okay. He was like, he's like, this is going well, so just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, don't stop.
Pachinko was a success. Like me and this like team of artists, like while we were learning pipeline, like, right at the first month of our work,
Hmm.
our first jobs in industry, I was king of the little guys. But it was fun. It was fun, and it was
Yeah.
fostering, and I was able to get help from my bosses, and I learned a lot about process that paid off later because by the time I was being put on Pinocchio, which is a higher profile blockbuster movie,
Hmm.
they were really confident that I could just start telling people what to do and make it work
Get her
and make sure
done.
that there's practical process and then there's creative subjective nuance and
Hmm.
they felt good about my subjective taste as
Yeah.
well. So that was super rewarding. But it started like right away. I just right off the bat I was like, okay, you guys, I'm gonna just help. I'm just gonna tell you what to do.
Yeah. Sometimes people need that, especially when there's a bunch of people running around. They're all like chickens with their heads cut off. I find, especially
Yeah,
in, sorry, yeah, go ahead.
no, that's just the chicks with the heads cut off. Like you just have to be decisive,
Yes.
right? You just have to say, no, no, okay, like it's gonna look like this. You're gonna work on this. You're gonna work
Hmm.
on this. I just brought that every day where I was being supportive with my colleagues. Like we all have the same job.
Yeah.
I'm not communicating with people to make them feel badly. And,
Hmm.
I'm trying to be fostering the way I want my experience to be fostering, right?
Yeah.
If I can turn my opinion into a learning opportunity
Hmm.
that helps these artists who are my age like excel, then that helps all of us. And then they felt good about it because it meant we were able to help each other. Like I don't have all the skills,
Yeah.
I had other artists who excelled in other areas, and so we would help each other out. But specifically, my leadership skills and my ability to communicate and my taste was really well received, and so that
Hmm.
was just like it was a runaway train at that point. And it was cool. It felt good working, and it felt good being given responsibility. It felt good just being taken seriously, right? Like
Yeah.
coming right out of school, I took myself seriously and I took my work seriously, and that meant that my bosses and my colleagues took me seriously too. And that was such a great evolution. It's just a right away a step in the right direction because I that's what I wanted. I wanted to present myself and present the work in a way that was well received, right?
That's one of the things that I'm just now in my life getting to a point where I'm actually like, oh, right. Like, I've been doing this for almost 20 years. Like,
Yeah.
how are you not at a point now where you have that I'm trying to shift anyway, what I'm trying to say is I'm trying to shift my perspective of myself of I'm not a doer. I'm actually like a leader in my own field in the way that I help my clients because still to this day, like I have this, I still get these like almost like a pings. You know, when you get those things that you haven't really worked out 100%. I'm like, I
Hmm.
still have those doubts of, oh, is this, am I good? Am I doing the right thing? And then, you know, the majority of the time when I'm working with clients, like I get positive feedback, I'm doing good work, like whatever. But I'm
Hmm.
at this point now where I'm like, I have to shift. I've been shifting my perception of the equal, and like I'm actually helping them, like they're not helping me. You know what I mean? And that has been like major for me. So it's good that you early on in your career, you're like, I got this. Yeah, I didn't have that.
I had that attitude when I went into school. When I started at George Brown, I was 4 or 5 years out of high school, so I'd taken time to kind of like think about
Yeah.
not just what I wanted to do, but where I was spending my time and how my hobbies were, like where I was putting my energy, where it was obvious to me, right? So by the time I started George Brown, going into that program, I was like laser focused
Yeah.
and believing in myself and understanding what I was capable of. My experience when I started Mr. X was an extension of my experience being at George Brown,
Hmm.
right? Where again I was working with not colleagues but classmates, and I brought that same professional attitude to my study, where that was also really well received. So by the time I started my job, I was like, okay, great, this is just the next, this is just the next year of school, basically. Like it's an extension of what I've been doing.
Hmm.
So the confidence that I had was confidence that I was able to bring with me
Yeah.
for like 6 years, or almost 7 years, school, working professionally. I had this unstoppable professional attitude. And by the time I lost my job or was laid off a year and a half ago, I felt all that momentum like stop and slow down. I was like, wait, wait, wait. Like, no, 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 no. Like this, it's been going so well, right?
Hmm.
That's been a big hurdle. It's been a big change because it was like 6 or 7 years of this like really good professional momentum. And so kind of catching up with myself, or feeling like, once you've lost your job, it would have been different if losing my job meant I could get another job. But with the
Yeah.
nature of the industry now, and after the writer's strike, and it's like everything's just cooked.
Hmm.
So my prospects have changed, and it's been hard to get back to
Yeah.
that headspace, right? Like
Hmm.
that momentum I had, where it was almost like it started with baby steps, going into school, blah blah blah, like finishing school, starting my job, next job, promotion, next job, like that was momentum. And having it all just like disappear, and having my prospects change, it's been hard to like get back to that headspace and find out where I can apply all of who I am in a new way, right?
Yeah. Perfect timing, because I was just about to ask about the writer's strike. So in our, communications before we hopped into the recording, you had mentioned a lot about, the writer's strike and the incoming of AI creating like a perfect storm. So for
Yeah,
you, having that been the case, what was it like going through that experience when you're like, oh, suddenly I'm out of work?
it was devastating. So many thousands of my colleagues have had to deal with the same thing. It was a perfect storm. It's been a perfect storm where, so the writer's strike happened,
Hmm.
and that created a year and a half, almost 2 year gap in film production because new projects were delayed in VFX, in pre and post production artwork, where I was working and existing, and all my colleagues were keeping busy and employed. What that meant was there weren't new projects coming in. So pre-production artists were the first to be let go
Hmm.
as the existing running projects would wrap up. Basically, with no new projects coming in, studios where artists like myself aren't unionized anywhere in the world almost, basically they're like, okay, well, everything we do here is task-based work, and we don't have tasks for you, so we have to fire you.
Yeah.
And it sucks, but that's just the nature of VFX, the industry as a whole. Games are like that too. It's funny, it's so pivotal. Like the VFX, CGI, it's everything.
Yeah.
Every single movie, like it's so important that these industry standard leaders just will destroy unionizations. They just will fire the whole studio,
Hmm.
close the whole studio. They would rather have no studio than have a unionized studio, which sucks. But it's partly because of the nature, and because it's all this task-based work. And so it's rough. Like, me, and I was actually lucky. I had a lot of colleagues who were let go way before I was,
Right.
who kind of found themselves in this I'm looking for work during a writer's strike. Like, I guess I'm unemployed for a while. And so I had, by the time that was happening and we were starting to see layoffs, myself and a handful of other artists that I was working with at my studio, we were proactive. So I started looking for work at other studios. Because I was anticipating also this big merger that was happening. So where I was working, Mr. X was at the time owned and operated by a larger conglomerate called Technicolor Group.
Mm-hmm.
And Technicolor Group has been around forever. They've done everything, and they were based out of the UK, but they had studios branches across the world. So Technicolor Group owned a few different studios. Mainly, the biggest one was called MPC, and then they owned Mr. X. And Mr. X had a Montreal location, a Toronto location. I think there's Australia or LA. This was a studio that had been around for like
Mm-hmm.
25 years.
Yeah.
The owner Dennis Berardi, he had done great. Like the whole Mr. X pipeline, all the projects they worked on were fantastic. They did all the Resident Evil movies and like all these like big up and coming projects that made a name for Mr. X. And that's then when they were bought, basically Dennis left, and Mr. X was existing as a subsidiary of Technicolor Group alongside with MPC. So then, the same year that the writer's strike happened, MPC and or Technicolor Group had basically made the decision that okay, we're going to actually just absorb Mr. X and eliminate Mr. X, and the whole thing, the entire operation will be under MPC, which meant that for like 6 months or almost a year, we were going through rudimentary retraining on MPC pipeline, and
Mm-hmm.
it meant we were getting new bosses, and it was like a whole mess. And
Mess.
so, senior artists and people who are in studio lead positions, and even artists like myself, we started going, okay, well, this is a mess. This is going to go crazy. I don't want to lose my job. I'm going to start looking for a new one.
Right.
Just as Pinocchio ended, I was given a promotion at Mr. X
Mm-hmm.
MPC. And I went from being an asset artist to being key artist, which meant that I understood pipeline. I was able to lead shots, environments, like everything I was doing.
Yeah.
Pinocchio was like a big audition. So I negotiated with them. I got a promotion, and then I worked in the promotional role for 6 months, basically before I was offered a role at Hern Hill Media, which was owned by Dennis Berardi, who had created Mr. X, right? So for me, I was excited because I enjoyed Mr. X. Like I was familiar with their work. I felt when I got hired at Mr. X, there's a lot of history. There's a lot of pipeline and seniority that was existing that I felt good about. So I was like,
Yeah.
damn straight. So I interviewed at Hern Hill. Interviewed at Hern Hill for creature art and concept art. I decided to go with the concept art role to work
Mm-hmm.
with Jordan because it's something I'd always wanted that. Since I was a kid, I always I want to be a concept artist because it's
Yeah.
just fun. Like being creative, being
Yes.
at the front end of a project is a different animal. So I was like,
100%.
absolutely, I'll take on that concept art role. And then it was perfect timing. Like I left MPC Mr. X to join Hern Hill in a new department, which was like a new journey. And then that year or 6 months later, MPC Technicolor completely dissolved internationally. They just shut down
Mm-hmm.
everywhere. Every MPC studio started shutting down. Thousands of people lost their jobs. Technicolor Group closed and liquidated everything. I was fortunate because my foresight, seeing what my industry leaders were doing,
Mm-hmm.
anticipating the change and looking for work, it paid off because it meant that where I had colleagues that were fired or let go, like 6 months prior, I left, and then I was able to work. I worked full time for a year and a little bit until finally I was laid off from Hern Hill
Mm-hmm.
because basically Hern Hill cited the writer's strike. Like, okay, well, finally this has caught up with us. We
Right.
don't have new tasking, and that was a year later, right? Lucky that I was able to make those moves and get that experience and work on Hern Hill for a year. But by the time I was laid off, along with some of my other colleagues, because they're basically just like tightening ship, right?
100%. Yeah.
I already knew that there were no jobs. I already knew that everything was shutting down, and at that time, right at that time, was when we were getting the first major motion AI models. So the whole thing, I could see it. I could see it all. I was just like,
Yeah.
oh no.
Yeah. Going through that whole process, you're on this trajectory, you're like, I'm moving up the ranks, and then everything starts to fall apart. Now that you have a bit of hindsight, how are you viewing the industry as a whole? Not only just as the industry, but like yourself within it. Because even me, like there's been so much work that I have lost over the last 2 years
Yeah.
because of AI. I have people, everyone can mock up their own now. They're building websites in minutes, and there's so much stuff that I'm looking at where I'm like, I have to adapt. I have to shift my perception of self and how I view my work and also what I'm doing. I need to kind of diversify not my portfolio per se, but my service and like how I work. And so for you, like, how has that shifted in your perception of self? Because every one of us as a creative has had to do that.
It's been rough for me mostly because since I was a kid, it's been a really straightforward trajectory for me to
Hmm.
work in film, doing VFX, like doing what I've done.
Yeah.
My all my experience since I was a child, like costumes, makeup, doing makeup professionally, working on films and TVs, doing practical effects, then doing digital matte painting, doing digital painting, doing 3D modeling, like the whole thing. All I've had like 16, almost 20, 16 years of special schooling and jobs.
Hmm.
So for me personally, seeing the film industry dissolve, or the VFX world kind of dissolve and become much, it's not that it's gone, but it's more competitive.
Yeah.
Where I was last year a standout applicant. Now artists who have been doing this for 25 years, they're out of a job. There's people who are out of a job who've worked on all the Transformers movies, three of the Harry Potter movies, six Marvel movies. Like they've
Yeah.
done it all. They've done all the major motion pictures, and they're the ones who were fired. So the thing that's changed for me now is my reach. Where I was once a standout applicant, now I'm competing with people who have these unbelievable senior portfolios, right? Where you don't even need to see their work. They have a list of like 30 movies they've worked on because they've been doing it for that long.
Yeah.
As compared to me working professionally for 3.5, maybe almost 4 years, that's a big change. So
Hmm.
um, it's not that I've given up. I've kept applying to jobs, but I'm not getting the callbacks because all these studios that are hiring, the only jobs available are senior artists, senior
Yeah.
lighting technician, senior pipeline developer,
Hmm.
senior, because those are the people who are out there now. Like
Yeah.
the competitive market has changed so much, and it's like that across the board, where juniors, entry level jobs just don't exist
Yeah.
because all of these roles, all of that work, all that labor that would be given to a junior artist or even a mid-level artist, it's all stuff that an art director can automate, right?
Hmm.
It's an ongoing reinvention. It took me my whole life to figure out what I was going to do before, right? So it's been a year and a half. I'm still figuring it out.
I went to design school. I went to OCAD. I graduated. I got a job right out of school, an agency, worked there for years, and then started my own company. And it's been steady trajectory. So in the COVID years where everything was getting a little like I was losing work, I was like, holy shit, I'm not working as much. I was looking for jobs. I'm like, I'm looking for work. I'm applying, and I have 15 years of experience under my belt in
Mhm.
a professional way. And so within a month, I applied to about between 35 and 50 jobs, did not get a single call. And I'm like senior level. I'm like, what the is going on? This is crazy. I truly believe, and this to me, and I don't know how woo woo you are, but to me, I look at life in general and I'm like, this is a sign that this path that I think that I need to take, where out of fear of like, oh, I need to find a job quick because I need to make some money.
Mhm.
It's showing me like this is not for you. This is not going to happen for you. This like to find another job because deep down, Gio, you're going to be miserable to work for somebody else. And so I took it as keep doing you, keep doing your own path and creating for yourself, which leads me to the hypergarden because this is something you've been working on. And I
Yeah.
truly believe that when there are gaps where we are, we're trying to we're trying to make this thing happen and it's not working out in our favor, it leaves this open space for you to create for yourself. And I truly believe that the way that we're going with, especially with work being, there's minimal jobs, it's a lot more competitive. I truly believe I'm like, we got to make our own. We got to create for
Yeah.
ourselves. And that's what you've been doing.
So when I lost my job, it was I cried. I was devastated. I was like
Of course.
stressed out. pretty quickly realized also just that I was really burned out.
Yeah.
I was exhausted at creating artwork 8 hours a day for these other projects, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I tuned in and realized I haven't done one piece of art for myself in three and
Yeah.
a half years since I finished school. I took like 6 months and didn't do anything, just didn't make any art. I just literally
Yeah.
took a break. I kept applying for jobs with the portfolio I had. And I updated my website. I did the legwork to try and keep things going and
Up to date.
uh, yeah, just like to keep up. By the time 6 months had rolled around, I finally decided to. I was like, okay, well, I had this like thing rattling around inside my head. So I
Mm-hmm.
started doing a map painting for a scene that I felt really passionately about. It was weird because I didn't know how to feel about AI. Like I felt hurt by AI.
Mm-hmm.
I felt replaced by AI. I didn't know. I felt shame to start exploring these tools. So I was really hesitant and like really, it was like really weird. I started playing around with Midjourney, basically just to support my existing professional workflow to
Yeah.
create a piece of digital art. And so I developed a process and started running with it. And at the time, Midjourney was like little baby
Yeah.
Midjourney. Um, so what it was capable of wasn't necessarily all that at the time, but
Mm-hmm.
for me, it was enough that it was speeding up my workflow. It was speeding up my painting process, where I was able
Mm-hmm.
to iterate and kind of start creating 2D digital assets, or like I call them AI. Like you could build like a 2D model.
Yeah.
It was fun. I started kind of getting more invested in the prospects, and so I spent some time working on that for a few weeks. But it was really off and on because I felt so weird about it, and I felt
Yeah, of
so
course.
conflicted. So like I would like work on it and then get depressed and be like I'm not gonna touch that. And or somebody I would post something about it and people like, oh, that's AI. Like, oh, you're an artist. So like, why are you using AI? I'm like, what do you want me to do? And it's okay. I've done the legwork. Like I've jumped through
Yeah.
the hoops. I've literally learned all the skills.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so some person on Instagram giving me a hard time posting like my first little AI tidbit. I was like, off. Like,
The people on Instagram, I'm
no,
gonna say
literally, I was
this.
like,
The people that have comments on shit, I'm like, I don't see you doing all, okay? What are you doing other than at other people about what they're doing?
they have all these comments about me using AI. I'm like, did you go and win an award and meet James Cameron?
Yeah.
No. Like, no, I've done the thing. I've done the thing. I don't need to prove to you or
Yeah.
anybody that I'm an artist. Like,
Yeah.
I can draw circles around you. I can
Mm-hmm.
paint. I can make costumes. I can do makeup, sculpt. Like, literally all of it.
Yeah.
Literally all of it. So for me, beginning to play with the AI was I'm like, okay, let's just like another tool in my kit, right?
Mm-hmm.
For like 6 months, I worked on one painting because I felt so weird about it. It was also kind of like I used this one painting almost as a place where I could return to it and work on it. It was part of my healing and returning to that creative process,
Yeah, for sure.
but it was also part of I'm kind of just watching the AI tools get better and better. So every time they would improve, I would return to the work and be like, okay, what can I do now? Right?
100%. For anyone listening, like what advice would you give to creatives who feel like, the industry is shifting, things are changing so fast where they feel like the ground is like shifting under them. Like what advice would you give them, especially as technology and the tools that we use are changing so drastically?
Try to keep up.
It
It's hard. It's hard.
is.
It's hard to keep up. I spent a lot of my time and energy on this personal project, which
Hmm.
is again, it's a continued part of that healing and reinventing
Yeah.
what gives my life meaning as an artist. Because maybe my life, where before all my purpose was I'm going to make movies, that maybe that's changed, right?
Hmm.
I'll keep applying for jobs and I'll keep building my portfolio
Yeah.
and I'll keep using these AI tools to produce artwork that celebrates that medium. It's part of the norm now. It's part of an evolving new part of industry. Speaking of, I post it on my Instagram and it's on my website,
So you're also
but
on YouTube, right?
I have a YouTube where I post. I'll upload finished
Amazing.
work and where I have my demo reel and stuff, which I send to employers as a exploration. This is the kind of thing that we're seeing become more and more popular for brands, for
Yeah.
like major brands. Like there's not going to be a need for a photographer and makeup and a model and a stylist and a blah 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 blah. Like all of those jobs are gone because someone with an AI tool and Photoshop skills can produce like ad campaigns in the new world. As a graphic designer or as a Photoshop technician, we're going to see more and more of these projects getting commissioned. The next big step is learning and starting to play with AI as an AI technologist. So AI technologist roles are even more the next step, where you're building these tools, running them locally on GPUs because it's all private. Like the kind of AI artwork that a company like Nike is going to be using to produce their campaigns,
Yeah.
it's all going to be in-house. Nobody's
Yeah.
logging into anything. It's all in-house. It's all built at home. It's going to be running off of server farms that they own because it's all NDA product, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's all stuff that nobody can see until it's been presented to the public or it's on their website. That's the next step. It's super daunting because I don't know how to code, but using tools like Comfy UI
Mm-hmm.
to produce this kind of artwork is going to become more and more popular, and it's going to be more and more difficult to tell what's real, right?
Yes, 100%. Oh, literally this morning. So my sister's in Dubai. I have to show you. My sister's in Dubai, and she has been communicating with like our family through our group chat. And she sends this photo, and it's like her with this guy, and she's like, "Oh, like found a boyfriend in Dubai, like blah blah blah." And my
Yeah.
mom, my brother are like, "Who is he? What's why? Like, what are you doing? Like, blah blah blah." And the first thing I just write is like, "I'm like, girl, that's AI. Like, like, look at it, pay attention." And my mom goes, "I'm a boomer. That's why I didn't notice." I'm like, to the point where like, if you just quickly look at it, it does look like legit. But then us having more exposure to it, we're like, you can see it immediately. But anyway, it was just so funny. Like even just
we're
today,
we're getting there where you can't. It's happened pretty
it's gonna get
fast.
here. Oh yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah.
So one of the things that I like to ask all of my guests, because I work in branding, so we talk about personal brands, we talk about corporate brands, etc. With all the things that we talked about, where your experience in life, in your own words, like what would you say is the most on brand thing about you?
Kind of like what we were talking about before. In being in pursuit of the cool and weird,
Hmm.
I like to produce things, whatever I'm on. I like to produce things that have a lot of fidelity and a lot of care put into them, and then I like to do things that people haven't seen before, right?
Yeah.
Because in our world where there's so much content and there's so much artwork, and it's with AI that's just quadrupled.
Yeah.
Like there's more video content on YouTube than there is history of humanity, right? Like
Yeah.
I am constantly asking myself, how do I stand out, and how do I make my clients projects stand out, right?
Hmm.
I can't pick a word, but like that as a whole is something that
Yeah.
I really believe in. I try to bring to all my projects is making the work good but making it original.
Yeah.
I like to subvert people's expectations and change people's perception of conventional norms. Like I explore a lot of like horror and science fiction and all these things, but really it's fun to use these unconventional subjects to try and communicate with my audience in meaningful ways, right?
Hmm. I love it. And like I said, I want to thank you so much for doing the show. Like it means the world. I'm glad that we could finally sit down and talk. I just
Yeah.
love the way that you are energized by the work that you do. Like that is the crux of what this whole podcast is about, is just talking to people about what they love. And so to anyone listening who would love to get in touch with you, contact, follow you, etc., like where can they find you?
You can reach me on my Instagram. You can reach me through my website. I have my email there. If you want to talk about my work, that's cool. If you want to talk about your work or projects that you might have upcoming, I'm passionate about what I do, and I put a lot of care into everything I do. It's not about what I'm excited about. I get
Hmm.
excited about the work, right?
Yeah.
I get excited about a brief that challenges me. So far in my life, I've done well, and I hope to continue doing well because I bring that to all of my tasks and all of what I do.
Hmm.
Hit me up on my email, or feel free to just ask me questions.
So what are those
Yeah,
things? List them. Your email, your Instagram, for anyone listening.
across the board, you can find my socials at the Great Black Lake. My website is thegreatblacklake.ca. My email is just quinncarvalho@yahoo.ca, or you can also reach me at quinn.greatblacklake@gmail.
And to anyone listening who wants to follow the podcast, you can check me out on all the streaming platforms. I'm on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. And Quinn, I want to thank you once again for coming on the show, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah, thanks so much.
No
This was fun.
worries.
Bye. Cheers.